Hello, and welcome to Coaching Corner with me, Tracy Forsyth. So today's Coaching Corner is inspired by Rudyard Kipling's very famous poem, If. I'm sure you'll know it, but it's the one that starts, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. In the poem, it lists lots and lots of things, and it basically says if you can do all of the things listed, essentially, it's a very good way to be. So Rudyard actually says, then you'll be a man, my son. He was obviously writing in a different time. Well, who knows? He might have written it like that now. But my interpretation is that it'll mean that you've taken ownership. You've stepped forward. You've spoken your truth. You've done the right thing despite adversity, dissent, or doubt. So there's too much in the poem for one coaching corner. So I'm just going to focus on those first 4 lines. So first, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. So why do I feel that resonates? Well, I think we can all identify being in situations that feel stressful, chaotic, like things aren't working as they should, people aren't working as they should, things are suboptimal. And you know, we're dealing with a huge amount of change and uncertainty. And whilst you might have always thought that those further up the ladder have all the answers, I mean, I always used to, you know, they don't always. And it's something you realize when you're at the top of the ladder, you know, that you don't suddenly have all the answers and you're not perfect. Anyway, likewise, the other people around you don't always act in the way you would or the way that you think they should. And often in those moments, others don't show up in their best light. And in truth, neither do we. I know all too well what it's like to stand there and say, well, this isn't right, and this ought to be sorted, and why doesn't so-and-so do this, and thingamabob ought to do that. You know, in other words, maybe not quite losing my head, but certainly blaming others. And when I realized that, never mind my standing in the pecking order or whatever hierarchy I was in, then I had a choice. I could stop blaming others and just do something about it and take action. Well, I found that there was invariably a more satisfying outcome. So whatever situation you're going through right now, or when you next find yourself in a situation where others are losing their heads and turning to blame, now ask yourself, how do I keep my head in this situation? What does that look like? And what is the outcome if I do that? So something for you to think about. And looking at the next 2 lines in the poem, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. I mean, trust yourself. If only it were that easy, am I right? I think I can hear you say. Well, you know, trusting in yourself and having that self-belief, let alone if others are doubting you, can be really, really hard. But it is a fundamental part of building confidence. And I think, you know, it's especially hard if you are what I call a self-critical overachiever, because you're so invested in getting things right and not making mistakes, delivering perfect outcomes again and again. So you don't want any chance that you won't get it right. So time and time again, I see so many of my coaching clients second guess themselves when they say, well, I want to do this. You know, I want to say that. I think this is the right way to go, but, you know, so-and-so might think this, or my boss thinks that, etc. And when we talk things through, you know, invariably they realize that they're right because they've thought about it. It's their, you know, their expertise or their experience. So what they're doubting is really, you know, they're not trusting themselves. They're doubting their expertise, experience, or intuition. But the answer all along was for them really to trust themselves despite the doubts. So trust yourself despite the doubts. You may actually and most likely be right. So finally, the last line, but make allowance for their doubting too. I think this is interesting. You know, some doubt from others is either justified and helps you come up with something even better, or it stress tests your conviction and you stick to your original thought. I mean, there's lots of other outcomes it could be, but, you know, not all doubt is bad. It's useful to you. You know, I learned this presenting proposals to the board. So I used to just hope everyone around the table would just agree with whatever it was I wanted. And I was scared and frightened of any kind of opposition or difficult questions. I took it very personally. But then I just really realized that hearing and examining those doubts or oppositions were really useful for me to consider other angles to my proposal or to what I was thinking. And ultimately, it either made something stronger, you know, because I caught things that I hadn't seen, or it exposed flaws, which meant it wasn't a good idea to proceed. So if it's useful to you, try to reframe other people's doubts as a way to stress test your thoughts and ideas, and almost as if it's collaborative input. How does it make it stronger? How does it point you in the right direction? Or, you know, are those doubts something that are survived the stress testing? So I will leave you with those thoughts. I've put a link in the post to the whole of Rudyard Kipling's poem If, because I'm sure you'll be, if you've got this far, you'll probably be intrigued to go back and have a look at it again. See what else you love from it and think is useful to share. And remember, keep your head when all those around you are losing theirs, and trust yourself despite the doubts. All right, be fearlessly you. I will leave you with that and see you next week. Take care.